Hey, yo, what up? Welcome back. This is not a podcast. It's just my thoughts with Rob Martman. Thank you all for watching. So yesterday, new court documents in the Drake versus UMG defamation case were filed and made public on the internet. And it got a lot of folks buzzing, got a lot of folks talking. It's making a lot of headlines. I'll give an overview. I read the documents. I got my hands on them last night, read them, tried my best to understand them. I'm not a lawyer, but I've been following and not just the headlines, but I've been reading a lot of documents. But this is the best of my knowledge, the best of what I can gather from what I read. So I'll just give an overview. Right now, I think it's important to say that we are in the discovery stage. The trial has not started yet. When Drake first filed his complaint and then his amended complaint, many of the things that, he and his team accused UMG of, basically, promoting what they claim is a defamatory record and Not Like Us, knowing that it did damage to Drake's reputation and potential future business dealings. So many of the things that he accused UMG of and the language that you would see in the complaint and the amended complaint is on information and belief. And the discovery process is so UMG can turn over requested documents so Drake's legal team can build their case on information and belief that they have to actually see, based off of UMG's documents that they turned over, what was concrete, what was real. And vice versa. Drake's team has to turn over requested documents also so UMG can build their defense. Now, remember, UMG asked, and, they filed a motion to have the discovery halted because they also filed a motion to dismiss the case. The judge has not ruled on UMG's motion to dismiss yet. But the judge did rule that discovery will go on. The judge was like, well, basically, while I'm ruling on the motion to dismiss, we're not going to halt discovery. Discovery will go on. And, ruled that UMG just couldn't throw out all of the discovery like in one fell swoop, is what they tried to do with that motion. And the court will rule on a document by document basis. So basically, what it boils down to, right? Like in kind of layman's terms, the way that I understand it is Drake team, they want the most information that they can obtain. UMG wants to give the least amount of information that they have to legally. They don't want to expose themselves or their employees more than they have to. They don't want to expose their business dealings more than they have to. A lot of people look at it and say, well, if you don't want to, if you have nothing to hide, why not share the documents? That's part of it for sure, but also just knowing that UMG or any major label company or really any major company and corporation, at least in America, is not in the business of sharing information. Is not in the business of making their contracts public. It's just not how business is conducted. So it's a little more, it's not as simple as, well, if you don't have anything to hide, just turn the stuff over. It's just, it's not how business works. It's not how these companies work. But, basically it boils down to Drake team wants the most information. UMG wants to give the least amount of information, right? One thing to be clear also is these are all accusations. So just because there are certain documents being requested doesn't mean that there's guilt there. Drake's team is suspecting that there may be useful information to their case. So they'll pull out the thread and see what they can get. That's just the strategy. What's going on. And it's not like all documents. It's not like a free for all. There is some agreed upon, like in an email, if you're searching an email database or a document database, there's certain date parameters that are agreed upon. Okay, we want documents relating to these search terms, maybe not like us, NLU, Kendrick Lamar, this, that, and third, from this date to this date. And so there's search parameters set, and then UMG kind of searches their files or has an independent vendor search their files and see what they can dig up and then turn it over. But what we're seeing right now is the tug of war. Again, Drake's team wanting the most information, UMG wanting to give the least that they legally have to. Disclaimer before we go further, if you follow the channel, you know how I feel about this. I'm not a fan of the case. I've stated this before. I'm not upset at Drake taking on UMG. I'm for artist rights. But taking on UMG after losing a rap battle that he willingly participated in and that he threw personal dirt, and then placing Not Like Us squarely in the middle of that suit, that just don't sit right with me. And that's just me being honest with y'all. I think this has the potential to change how rap battles go down in the future. And it just seems like sour grapes to me. I would say the same thing if Meek Mill sued after Back to Back. Slightly different. I'm not comparing it as a one-to-one. Back to Back was a strong diss track. I don't know if it was as vicious, but you gotta ask Meek that. At the time, Meek, I'm sure he felt really hurt, disrespected, and all of that. Even though Meek started the thing with the tweets and all that, I'm saying it's not an exact one-to-one, but I'm just saying I wouldn't support a lawsuit after Back to Back neither, which was nominated for a Grammy, which was a huge single. Yes, being called a pedophile sucks. I acknowledge that sucks, but so does being called an abuser. So is saying having your paternity called into question, saying your best friend fathered your child. Like, the thing got ugly, and then you could go by degrees of, well, what's worse? It's worse to be called a pedophile than a child abuser. Fuck out of here, man. Like, it's just, what I'm saying? The thing got ugly. You know what I'm saying? And became a competition of who's going to take it to hell, who's going to take it lower to hell, that they were both participating in. And now that you're on the losing end of that, there's a lawsuit. Doesn't sit right with me. But those are just my thoughts, right? And what really matters is what the courts decide. That's what really matters. Is what will the court decide? I don't know which way this thing is going to go, but we're going to talk about it. So there's been meetings and calls between the two parties, between the two legal parties, UMG's legal team and Drake's legal team, just trying to figure this out. And the majority of these documents that we're talking about today is correspondence, is about the back and forth correspondence between the two parties, where they're at an impasse, where they can't agree to certain things. So I assume, what these documents and what these filings are is that, Drake's team in particular is looking on the court to decide what's what at the things that the two parties can't agree on. Remember, Drake's teams want the most information. UMG wants to get the least. There's certain things that they agree on and certain things that have been turned over already. And where they butt heads is what they want the court to decide on. So Drake's team wants Lucian Grainge documents. UMG doesn't want to give them. That's right off the bat. That's the first thing here, the first kind of document in these filings. Basically, UMG is arguing that Lucian had nothing to do with the decision making here, and that he was so far up the food chain that any correspondence he would have had was kind of redundant from the label heads and other people who they're seeking information from, namely, and not exclusive to, but, a guy like John Janik, who is the head of Interscope, where Kendrick is signed, and then Monty Lipman, who is the head of Republic Records, where Drake is signed. Like, UMG is basically saying, if you have the documentation and the correspondence from those two, plus others, there's a list of others, then you don't really need Lucian, because Lucian wasn't like in the granular of this. And so, if Drake's team had those, they wouldn't need Lucian, and Drake's team is basically saying that that's BS. Like, this is Lucian Grainge is the head of the company. And what it seems to me that they want to prove is that Lucian, that one, that he knew these were damaging to Drake. Remember, because in the complaint, Drake kind of said that, he was telling UMG, like, and they mentioned in here again, and this was a mention in the complaint, like his house getting shot up, and within this suit, it seems like they're trying to connect that shooting to the record, to Not Like Us. So that Lucian knew it was hurting Drake and hurting his reputation, and knew that there was a renegotiations coming up, and that Lucian had some type of responsibility to stop this. So they're requesting documents to see what Lucian knew, you know what I'm saying, what his correspondence was, what type of information he had, and UMG is saying that's irrelevant, so they want the court to decide on that. Drake's team wants an unredacted version of Kendrick's contract. It seems UMG sent it over, but it was heavily redacted. That's in Exhibit 8. I'm gonna open up Exhibit 8. I'm gonna open up Exhibit 8. So here it is, Exhibit 8. Here's part of it is we're writing regarding a number of issues with respect to UMG's document collection and production. Lucian Grainge, plaintiff renews his request that UMG collect, review, and produce Lucian Grainge custodial documents. I'm going to skip over a little bit. Kendrick Lamar contract. Here we are. There's a section right here that says Kendrick Lamar contract. On June 24, 2025, you produced a heavily redacted version of the Interscope agreement with Kendrick Lamar at UMG. The extent of your redactions, which cover the vast majority of the 22-page agreement, so it's a 22-page contract, render the agreement unreadable and incomprehensible. The redactions are plainly improper, especially because the parties specifically agreed to treat these types of contracts as attorneys' eyes only under the terms of the protective order. So, what Drake's team is saying is whatever they agree to is attorneys' eyes only. So only the attorneys will see Kendrick's contract. This won't be made public information. But who knows? People talk, things leak, secretaries, this, that, like, who knows? But that is the agreement. The assumption here is that UMG turn over Kendrick Lamar's contract and only the lawyers see it. Whether that will actually happen, I don't know. UMG sent over a contract, but heavily redacted. So a bunch of the information was omitted. Your unilateral responsiveness redactions are all the more problematic given that UMG itself has previously refused to permit plaintiffs to make responsiveness redactions, telling plaintiff that doing so will be highly unusual and inappropriate and that there is no provisions in the federal or local rules for redaction. So, they're basically calling out UMG saying, yo, y'all want to accept redacted documents from us, you know what I'm saying? And here you are, you turned this over. We'll see what the judge decides. So that was Exhibit 8. There's something else here. I gotta find it, but there's something else here. Oh, Exhibit 10. Let's go because Exhibit 10 is actually relevant here. This is about what UMG actually did turn over, right? I'll skip over this. This is about John Kozak as a document custodian. So they want his stuff too, it seems like. I don't know what John Kozak does, but I want to get to the Kendrick part. Lamar contract. So here we are. This is in Exhibit 10. UMG agreed to produce the portions of any contracts or agreements between UMG and Lamar, allowing UMG to approve, reject, refuse to publish, edit, amend, alter, or veto the publication of the recording, image, or video. See UMG's responses and objections to Drake's RFP number 1. At your request, we also agreed to produce the section headings in the contract so you can see what topics the redacted portions concern. This is actually, and my bad, this is actually UMG. This is UMG talking here. You know what I'm saying? We write on behalf of UMG Recordings. So this is like UMG's response. So basically what UMG is saying is what we agreed to is not the Kendrick contract in its totality, but we agreed to produce the portions of the contract that have the language where UMG has to approve, reject, refuse to publish. Like basically there's a portion in that contract, in most contracts, if not all recording contracts, that says, oh, the parent company can reject certain songs for any reason. Hey, we're not putting out this song for any reason or something like that. So UMG is saying we turned over the contract. What we agreed to is for you to see that portion. And at your request, we also agreed to produce the section headings. So they have the headings so you can see what was redacted. So the headings are there and then everything else is redacted. UMG has done so. So UMG is saying, hey, we gave y'all what we agreed upon. Your contention That the contract as produced is somehow incomprehensible is wrong. The information we agreed to produce has been produced, and you have not articulated any basis for why Drake requires an unredacted copy of the contract or how the redacted content has any conceivable relevance to claims and defensives at the issues of this case. UMG does not intend to produce an unredacted version of Lamar's complete contract to Drake. So that's UMG standing their ground. They're saying, "Nah, we're not. We're not giving it to you. We agreed on something. We gave it to you. We're not giving you any more than that." Drake's team wants related, like, documents related to any domestic violence related to Kendrick Lamar and the relationship between Kendrick, Dave Free, and Kendrick's children. That's the part that is forming headlines, right? Oh man, I wish I had. Do I not have my notes? I thought that was 6. Yeah, I was right. Okay, so that was in Exhibit 6, right? So if you see here, document request number 50 says, from January 1st, 2014 to present, all documents and communications relating to allegations of domestic violence, violence against women, and or other forms of violence committed by Kendrick Lamar Duckworth. So they're going to the label. They want whatever documents the label has relating to any allegations of domestic violence or violence from Kendrick. Then document request number 51. From January 1st, 2019 to the present, all documents and communications relating to David Isaac Freely, a.k.a. Dave Free, and his relationship with Kendrick Lamar Duckworth and Kendrick Lamar Duckworth's children. Now, remember, in Family Ties, Drake, alleged that Kendrick assaulted his partner, the mother of his children, and he also alleged the love triangle where Dave Free fathered one of Kendrick's children. And now they're seeking documentation from the label and people involved about, I guess, looking to see what documentation of that there is. It's a little strange because why are you requesting this of the record label? These are private matters, if anything. But these are all still just allegations. Nothing changes from the record. You know what I'm saying? Like these now make headlines. This doesn't make it true. This doesn't make any of what Drake said in the record true. This is, this comes across to me as fishing. Hey, let's just see. Let's just see if there's anything in there. Let's just see what we can find. Let's just see what we can uncover. Let's just see if there's anything that we can use, for our case. I don't know. There's a big deal being made about this. I think there's a visceral reaction to seeing this in a court document. Again, a lawsuit that was said initially, oh, this isn't about Drake personally. He's not suing. Kendrick personally. He's not suing Kendrick personally. He's suing UMG. This is very personal towards Kendrick now. Right? You know what I'm saying? So I think there's a visceral reaction to that. I think the internet is saying that and was like, yo, this feels crazy. But it's just a request. We don't know what documents they are, if any. We don't know what the truth is, if anything. You know what I'm saying? So this just feels like fishing. This is like a TBD. Like, what actually turns up? Does this play out in court? This can also go away. They could request documents and not find anything, or not find anything relevant to what they're looking for, and it doesn't come up in court. So this, again, this dominates the headlines. This makes people feel away. I think this was the same as the day before yesterday. Like, the situation is still the same. Like nothing has changed except they're requesting documents around this. All right, so he said it in the record. Feels crazy. It absolutely feels crazy. I'm not saying that, but I'm not overreacting to any of this until it actually plays out in court. Drake's team wants documents related to Pusha T's story of Adidon. For what I'm assuming, and let me just look this up before I even go to what I assume. I'll just read it to you. I know this is in Exhibit 6 also. This is in the same exhibit. Let's see. Okay, here we are. Exhibit 6. Okay, document request number 30. For the time period of January 1st, 2018 to May 31st, 2018, all documents and communications relating to any instruction, directing, or suggesting that any musical work or music video by Pusha T, including but not limited to Story of Adidon, be censored or otherwise modified, altered based on the content of musical work or music video. Or B, the decision to not license, publish, or promote any musical work or music video by Pusha T, including but not limited to Story of Adidon, on the basis of the content of the musical work or music video. So, I mean, Pusha has been vocal about, he spoke to GQ, spoke about being taken off a Pop Smoke record, talked about, he's talked about before, and there was a lot of rumors and theories swirling about why he was left off of Maybach Music 6, which featured Lil Wayne. It was Rick Ross's Maybach Music 6. That was a Sony release, but Pusha's a UMG artist, so UMG still has to sign off on Pusha being on that record. So it seems like they're kind of tugging at that, but what they're really focusing on here is Story of Adidon, which is interesting. The Story of Adidon wasn't officially released. And what I assume, this is my assumption, what I assume Drake's team may be saying is, well, UMG has made the decision before to censor artists, and why didn't they do it with Kendrick? Which feels crazy. Like, Drake was used to having artists censored on his behalf, having the diss tracks halted, but they didn't do it with Kendrick. But to focus on Story of Adidon here, I think there's just one part that they're missing. And again, this is the part that they're requesting for the most information. They're going to see if anything's there, but there may not be anything there. Story of Adidon was a freestyle. It was over Jay-Z's Story of OJB. It was released on SoundCloud. I don't know that it was ever intended to be a wide commercial release on DSPs. I mean, for one, you would have had to clear it with Jay and the writers and the publishers of that record. I think so. Story of Adidon and Not Like Us aren't the same. Not Like Us is an original composition. I don't know, and when I say I don't know, I truly don't know. But I don't think, my assumption is that Story of Adidon was never intended for commercial release. I don't know if that was an example of, you can't put this out because of all the stuff you said about Drake. I wonder if it even came up. I wonder if they ever even talked about putting it on DSPs. We'll see, though. This is the request for information, right? This is the discovery phase. I don't think that there's anything here, but it is kind of crazy to be like, and this is, again, my assumption, this is me reading into it, that was like, yo, you did it before with Pusha, why didn't you do it with us? You know what I'm saying? Like, why didn't you do it with the Kendrick joint? That sounds a little crazy. Drake's team wants the documents related to Kendrick's Super Bowl performance and how UMG and UMG's publishing division went ahead to license the record. They want documents related to Grammy nominations for Not Like Us, because a label you have to submit to be nominated for the Grammys. So they want documents related to that. But the same way Back to Back was nominated for a Grammy. There is some. I've heard stories about Drake never actually wanted that to be nominated, and the label or somebody nominated on his behalf. That I don't know, but it was nominated for a Grammy. That's what I know, and it was a big deal at the time. I remember it was like, yo, a diss record got nominated for a Grammy, like back to back, like, yo, they nominated back to back for a Grammy, and we were celebrating that because, again, in hip hop, the battle aspect of the culture is something that we love. It's something that we celebrated, that back to back was nominated for a Grammy. We celebrated that back to back was a huge hit record. We are like, damn, he turned like a diss song to a hit song. That's how you do it. It wasn't like this underground thing anymore. So we celebrated when Drake did it. Now that he's on the receiving end, it seems to be a problem. But again, we'll see. They want docs related to GNX. And even though Not Like Us wasn't on GNX, my assumption here is that they want to use this as an example of how UMG made a decision to censor or not include the song. That's my pure assumption. But it also doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because if UMG had the power to stop Kendrick, let's say Kendrick absolutely, like, I feel like it's an artistic decision as to why Not Like Us wasn't on GNX. That is my assumption. That is what I feel. That is what my gut tells me. But let's just play devil's advocate and say UMG had the power to tell Kendrick, no, you can't put Not Like Us on GNX. You know, and let's say because the lawsuit spooked them or whatever, right? Then why let him perform the song at the Super Bowl, which came after GNX? Doesn't make much sense to me. To me, again, this is just Drake's team seeing what they can get to build their case. And I'll look for it here. This is Exhibit 7. And Exhibit 7 says, Counsel, thank you for the meet and confer yesterday. As promised, getting back to you on 2 items. Plaintiff will reserve rights to the designation of Avery Lipton as a custodian. That's Monty Lipton's brother. He's also a head at Republic. And it says, regarding using the search term GNX to search documents for request number 3, reserving all rights, we agree with your suggestion that an appropriate compromise at this time is to run following: GNX with 25 Not Like Us or NLU. And it appears somewhere else in the document too, but they're basically looking. You remember how I said that the search terms, when they're looking for these documents, there's certain search terms that they're looking for. They want GNX to be a search term. They want to see documentation on GNX. Drake's team somewhere in here is also alleging that there was a meeting where UMG employees were told to stream Not Like Us on their personal Spotify accounts, and they would be reimbursed for any fees associated. We'll see. I mean, how many people are we talking? Like, again, let's just assume I'm playing devil's advocate that this happened. 100 people, 200 people. Like, the record was a hit, man. Like, that's the thing about Not Like Us. The record was a hit. They want information around, like, people chose the record. You know what I'm saying? They want information around Kendrick being played on playlists that were played, like, in the UMG office, like playlists you would hear in the lobby and things of that nature. There's information of requesting information around Interscope paying NFR, that podcast and that site. They want communications with YouTube Reactor and MC Screwface Jean. Also, there was a development a couple of weeks ago back where Drake's legal team was allowed to serve Kojo, Menne, Asamoah. He's alleged by Drake's team to have played a role in the suspected botting artificial streams of Not Like Us. UMG tried to serve him with papers a couple of times and was unsuccessful, and sought out the courts to help, and now it seems like he was successfully served and has to turn over requested documents, information, maybe a phone for discovery. Again, all of it is alleged. I know people who actually went through the deposition already. So that process has been going on. I can't imagine that anybody wants to, like, go through this process. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, it's like jury duty, right? Like, regular people get called for jury duty and be like, man, I don't want to go to this shit. So I can't imagine that anybody who is facing a deposition that has to turn over documents wants to willingly do that. Like, it's an invasive procedure. I think anybody wants to do that. So Kojo ducked it for a while. What information does he actually have? What will Drake team find? Like, we'll have to wait and see. If it's something, it'll surely come out in court. But him just finally being served, to me, wasn't like big news to me. Again, it's like, oh, well, why were you hiding? Why were you ducking? Because I don't want to go through this shit. Like, I think most people feel that way. Most people will feel that way. That's it for now. I would have went through the whole thing, which it was a lot of documents here, so I just kind of summed this up. I hope this was helpful. Again, all of this is discovery. It's a request for information. It doesn't mean that the information is there. It doesn't mean that even Drake's team knows exactly what they'll uncover. and all of this will play out in a trial if we get there. There's still the motion to dismiss. There's still a chance or probability, a chance that they settle out of court. That's a possibility. All can go to trial, and it's going to be a blockbuster. It's going to be like, that's when the fireworks are going to start. That's when we're going to start seeing what was turned over in discovery. That's when we're going to start seeing documentation about some of the things that were alleged, is if this actually goes to trial. So, right now, nothing concrete. So we just wait and see. But let me know what you think in the comments. We'll talk about it. All right. Till next time. Peace.